Ready to get started, folks? Find your seat. Oh man, look at the control there. All right, I'm just gonna say a few words and then we're gonna let these guys get started. I wanted to thank you all for coming. It's such a nice crowd. We're so grateful that you're here. Please do turn off your cell phones, set them to mute, put them on vibrate, whatever you need to do. I want to thank Jackie Mashek for the collages. She earns every dime she makes for those. You know, it takes her a long time. We have Bone Creek represented here tonight, and they're helping us do the filming. Thank you so much, and thanks for bringing Dale Nichols information. That's wonderful. Want to thank the Harushka Memorial Library for helping us promote this event. We want to thank the Butler County Clinic PC because they are our local sponsor. They're a $300 sponsor. That's a big deal. And then, of course, our grant funders are Humanities Nebraska and the Butler County Area Foundation. We're very grateful every year to the Butler County Area Foundation. And we want to thank our presenters. They have worked tirelessly for months and months. And it's a team, it's a dream team, I think, and it's gonna be a great presentation. So I'm not gonna introduce them, they're gonna introduce themselves, and so I'm gonna leave the show to them now.
Welcome, and my name is Jean Hine, and I live here with my husband and David Steady. And I have been a volunteer for the Boston Studio Project since 2002, and the Boston Studio Summit Project since 2008. Tonight, my colleagues and I will be giving a presentation on the cemeteries of Butler County. Butler County has 45 active cemeteries on public and private land, some having only 1 or 2 graves. The largest is David City Cemetery, which currently has more than 3,000. The oldest is Linwood Dawson, which was established in March of 1872. There are 3 types of cemeteries. Ones that are associated with the church, and we have 2 up here that are associated with the church. And then there are townships, which is like Edholm, Surprise, Bellwood, Pleasant Hill, Circle Mound, Garrison, Ulysses, and then lastly there are 3 Bohemian National Cemeteries, which are Brainerd, Bruno, and Abbey. Many early immigrating Czechs were Catholic, and they worshiped in beautiful Catholic churches of eastern Butler County. Czechs who came to Nebraska that were Protestant, non-religious, or freethinkers have left the Czech lands for nationalism, a desire to live without the ruling class restricting their religion, culture, language, and heritage. These Czechs came to America seeking a life where they could choose their own religion, live their lives without so many restrictions by the state. But in the late 1800s, most of the cemeteries of Butler County were associated with churches, and often in the eastern half of the county where Czechs settled, these Catholic churches restricted burial in their cemeteries to members of the Catholic Church. Creating these Bohemian National Cemeteries without restriction for religion or heritage allowed non-Catholic Czechs a place to publicly honor their dead. They used the word national as it described the beliefs they brought with them from their homeland. Many of the cemeteries are in towns that were settled by Czechs in the 1870s and 1880s, such as Abbey, Bruno, Brainerd, Loma, Appleton, Linwood, and Dwight. Some of these towns are still populated by descendants of the early Czech settlers who came to this area to homestead and establish business in the area. Butler County has one cemetery holding the remains of individuals with Luxembourg heritage. St. Peter's Catholic Presentation Parish Cemetery near Bellwood. The Irish settled mostly in the Ulysses area, and the Germans in the southwest part of the Butler County. The cemetery project has been a joint effort of volunteers from the Butler County Genealogy Society, the Boston Studio Project, and the Hrishka Memorial Library. It began in the summer of 2008 after the Nebraska State Genealogical Society asked all counties to begin an effort to photograph every gravestone in the state. To this date, the Butler County group has outdistanced many of these communities by making both cemetery images and information on the internet. However, the progress to place this information onto the web was not so simple. It has taken many years and thousands of hours of volunteer work to accumulate over 20,600 gravestone photos, along with the name and the data of each person beneath each stone. Bonnie Lucky, Kenny Cole, and I headed up the project, which initially involved walking all the cemeteries, row by row, taking photos of each tombstone, and recording all the data on each one. We were later joined by Trish Collister of Dwight, Pauline Dworik of David City, and Carolyn Dworik of Brainerd. The photos and data were uploaded to a database which Bonnie created and is now maintained by Kevin Meisenberg of Bellwood, who has expanded our database and has created a website. Volunteers who have helped in other ways were Chris Glock of David City, Rosalind Schmelka of Dwight, Jane Burrish, and Jeanette Hines of David City. Members of various cemetery boards around the county have assisted by providing us with maps and cemetery locations. Adding data, which now includes obituaries, and updating new burials will be an oncoming project. And we always say volunteers are welcome.
Good evening. My name is Kevin Meisenberg, and I handled a lot of the computer aspect of this project. I got my start visiting with Bonnie Lucky back in 2005, looking for some Meisenberg family photos, and she helped dig through the archives of the negatives they had from the Boston studio and got me a big selection of stuff. It expanded to, in the next year, to where she wanted a better database than what they were originally doing. So I created a database, and this is what it looks like now, but this is the Boston Studio Photos Collection database that we use. So whenever we scan something, a lot of this data is already in, but if we scan something new, we add the photo, update any of the information, and make it available. A few years later, 2008, she wanted a better database for handling the cemetery project that they were starting. And so I created a variation of what was the Boston Studio database for handling the cemeteries, to where we could connect the tombstone photos, add in various information, and make that available initially just in the office, and later it would expand to the website. This is the current homepage of the website. It's had variations over the past 10 plus years. It handles both the cemeteries and the Boston Studio photos. And I should mention that besides Boston Studio, there's other photo collections there. Boston Studio is the largest, but there's other ones. I'm going to do a quick or a brief summary of the website just for those that aren't familiar with it, so that if you thought, oh, yeah, I didn't know that was there, we'll go through it real quick so you can see what is available for you to use up there. And it's broken down across on the current menu system, shows the cemetery list. They can search all the cemeteries in the county, lists of the photo galleries that we have, search through all the photos in all the collections, and then we also have other links for research and a few history books. Particularly Gene, Hein, and I put together a couple books for Marietta schools 10 to 15 years ago. Along the right-hand side of the page is the most recent updates that we make to the website. So it's a quick way to see if there's something new there. You can also click on the more links and view a longer list of what's there. But for the most part, you're going to go to the search pages and search for what you're looking for. This is the cemeteries list page where it's listing all the cemeteries. I'm showing just the first 12 items, 12 to 16 items. It's scrollable, so you scroll down, you can see more. There's also a map at the top you can click, and it's similar to the map that you'll see at the back of the room on the bulletin board, and it allows you to see the different parts of the county where the cemeteries are, and you can click on those to get a more detailed view. You can also filter, so if you're not sure what the name of the cemetery is because you don't know how we recorded it, you can type in a partial name, such as if you wanted something that was in Abbey, you could type the word Abbey and then click apply, and you would see just the Abbey cemeteries. Otherwise, you can scroll, and then when you find the one you're looking for, in this example we're going to use Appleton, you just click on it, and it brings up the page with a little bit more detailed information on Appleton. Besides the description and location at the top, you can also click to browse just the graves in this one cemetery. So if you know what you're looking for is in Appleton, or whatever cemetery you're looking at, you could click that to see that. If you want to see a printable directory of our records for that cemetery, you can click on this link. If you just want to see a list of the veterans as far as what we have recorded, you can click that. Click this to see a printable map of the cemetery. This will give you a link to the Google Maps, or to Google Maps, bringing you to the cemetery. So if you're trying to determine exactly where one of the more obscure cemeteries are, you can click this. It takes you to a new web page with the Google Maps, and you can zoom in from there or get directions. This is browsing just the one cemetery. Very simple, and it's a little bit similar to search, but it's just showing you the stones that we have, tombstones that we have in that cemetery. You can filter by name, so if you typed in, for example, one of my relatives, an Andel, or friends like Kovar, and then click apply. I might have my clicks out of order, but so I'm going to go back. It will filter it and just show you Kovar items, and it may be the last name is Kovar, it may be the maiden name of someone was Kovar, it could be parents or children. So it's not only looking for the proper name, surname. This is the search cemeteries for all the cemeteries in the county. There's some search tips there to help you make the searches more effective. And you use this box here, and below it, it tells you that it searches the following names: the name, spouse, parents, children, birth and death dates, and the notes field. So it's searching a broad range, so it can at times give you too many results, but just add a few more search terms or change what you're searching to narrow it down. And then you just click search, and it brings up list. So in this case, I searched for Paul Meisenberg, which was one of my relatives. So I'd entered his name in there, clicked search, and I got a result. As you can see, he's the top list there. But it also found other people that had, in this case, Margaret Peters had a son named Paul Peters. And so that's also what shows up. So just searching for Paul Meisenberg is not gonna show you only Paul Meisenberg's, it'll show you relatives. So Margaret Peters was a Meisenberg and she had a son named Paul. Similarly, my great-grandfather, John J. Meisenberg, had a son named Paul, and he's actually the first Paul on this list, but it shows you him too because tied together. And this obviously had, more than likely had more results, but I just printed the top 3. If you, I meant to point out that if you click on his name, it brings you to a detailed page for him, to where you can see the birth and death date, family information, a request if you would like us to send you an obituary, and a notes field, which sometimes it's very small, other times it has a good part of their obituary, and just depends on how we recorded that grave. And then we include a tombstone photo, sometimes more than one tombstone photo if they have information on both the front and the back, or if it's a family tombstone with individual markers for individual people. And then the last thing is the grave location, and it's showing here that it's in St. Peter's Catholic and Presentation Cemetery. Has a link to the map, plus it tells you the lot number and the grave ID. And if you see something that's not correct, which happens occasionally, you can click this link to send us an email and we will correct it. I'm going to briefly go over the Boston Studio collection because that aids in genealogy research because of the wide range of photos that we have available. The largest, as I mentioned, is the Boston Studio Project. We have scanned about over 12,000 photos, or around 12,000, but there's actually, I believe, about 65 to 68,000 negatives to scan, and that's still an ongoing project to scan negatives. A.B. Thomas is another good collection from the 1904-1905 David City, where A.B. Thomas went around and took photos of every home and business in town, or most every home and business in town, created a photo album, which we have scanned a copy of that and make those photos available. And lastly, we have a selection of Banner Press photos from the 50s, 60s, and 70s primarily, and those are available also for searching. So if you see something, when we get to here, if I did a search here on photos for football team, it brings me a list of results. And for example, if that maybe is the one I'm looking for, it's a photo of a team, but it might also bring up a thumbnail that says submit a request because we have not ever scanned that. So if that's maybe the one you want based on the description and the title, you might click that to submit a request. A point of note is the name, the first column on this display, the title, name, and address, is often referring to the purchaser. For the Boston Studio Project, it's talking about the people that bought the photos or paid for the photos or arranged the photo setting. So it may have been bought by the grandfather, but it might be photos of the grandchildren. So that's something to be aware of. In this example, we're going to click on football team, and it brings up a detail page with a thumbnail of the photo, the title or buyer of the photo, the item number, which is what you would use to communicate to us what item you might want to either purchase, or if you're doing a thumbnail request, you can click, send us that number and we will go scan that. The address or location typically is the mailing address for Boston Studio. So if a person lived near Bellwood, Boston would have wrote down their name and then Bellwood. Or if it was by Marietta, was known as Luxembourg at the time, it might say Luxembourg or David City. Sometimes it will not give an address, so it's not always useful. The date of the photo, that's not always known. We have a lot of photos that we do not have the exact dates on them. We know a range, but not specific. We also have a lot of photos that we know the time frame, but we don't know the buyer of them, so they're basically unknown photos. When we can, we put the names of all the people that are in the photos. So on this, we're lucky on this football photo that we have a lot of the names, if not all the names available. And lastly, we have details on the type of image that it was. In this case, it was from a photograph instead of a negative. Size of the original, so this was someone brought in an 8 by 10 image, and we scanned that, and then the condition of it. So on our negatives, it might say it's a glass plate or acetate. A few of them are nitrates, which are highly degradable images that we've scanned, all those. And then there's also some that are in the latter years where they're color photographs. And in some cases, they're just photo proof, so we scanned, again, a photograph instead of a negative. The negatives, if they're good quality, produce very good items for scanning. And again, if there's a order form, or if you want to email us about a photo because we have a name wrong. Now I'm going to talk about a project I've been working on the past year, which is to make a easy-to-use web page to use when you're at the cemetery. And this was inspired by Bob Bell, probably back in 2018 or 2019. He was visiting with us and said that we had all this information available on the cemeteries. It'd be great if you could be, while you're at the cemetery, do a search and bring up that information. And there are larger cemeteries in the state that have features like this. So we were talking with Bob about doing a kiosk of some sort and the cost of that and what you might do to make it cheaper. And then we let it sit for a little bit, thinking about it, and didn't come back to it till 2023, 2024, when I realized that everybody's carrying a nice computer in their hands, or a large percentage of us carry a computer to the cemetery. So why not make a nice, easy-to-use web page that you can bring up? So this is our cemetery mobile app. And there's an address there, but you don't have to worry about that. We have it on the handouts that we had available tonight. Plus, later I'll show you some additional ways you will get to it, hopefully make it easy to get to. So this will be a presentation on this. This is not going to be a tutorial, so don't worry about trying to keep track of everything I say. It's more to get you a view of the screens and get an idea of what you need to do if you ever want to use this. When the app starts, it launches a random photo of a cemetery in the county. So you may be at a cemetery, it's going to show you a different cemetery, so don't worry about that. It was just a way to have something load on the screen quickly while it's doing some stuff in the background. Once it's done, if you're at the cemetery, it's going to bring up, in this example, if I was at the David City Cemetery, it brings me right to the search page for the David City Cemetery. If instead I was at home or a ways away from a cemetery, it would bring up this page instead, which gives you a screen or a spot to where you can click to select the cemetery. Plus it has a few tips below that to help you with how to use the app. So if you click that, it brings up another screen where you can select your cemetery. In this case, we're going to select the Bellwood Cemetery. So here's the search page now for Bellwood. If you made a mistake and you want to select a different cemetery, click that link and we'll let you go back to that screen where you can pick a cemetery. You can click this link to bring up search tips to help you with, if you're not familiar with how to search, you can click that, showing you this. And they're real simple tips and we don't need to go over them, but it's to give you an idea of what to type in so you don't get frustrated. And if you click search tips again, it will go away. And that brings us over to here where I'm going to type in to search for Ralph Jones at the Bellwood Cemetery. So I typed in the name, clicked submit, and brings up his detail plus other ones that are similar. So again, you need to scroll down and view the other results in case it's not what you were looking for. You click on his name and brings you to his detail like I was showing you earlier. There's a link to viewing a cemetery map, which we'll get into on a later screen. The basic information of them, born and death dates, spouse, parents, location, children, notes. And it's the same information we have on our database at the libraries. There might be a few extra things we have, but pretty much if you stopped into the library and asked one of us to search for something, it's going to be the same thing you can do from our website or from this page. And so if you're don't know where their tombstone is, this does help you out by showing a picture of their tombstone, which might help you locate it in the cemetery. And also, again, the link at the bottom if you need to send us a correction. This is back to St. Peter's Catholic and Presbyterian Cemetery, and I'm going to do another search on Meisenberg. This is more about the Bellwood Cemetery map is a really long, skinny map, so this is going to make for a little bit better presentation. And again, you type in the name, hit submit. In this case, it brought a list, and the first one it showed was Nicholas. Not sure how it scores them, but it's just bringing up what it thinks is the best results from the search. You can scroll down, so on a smartphone, you're just using your finger to scroll down. If you're on your home computer, it might be the thumb wheel on your mouse. So here's two more listings, and we're back to the Paul Meisenberg one we looked at earlier. So we'll click on him again, and we're going to click on the cemetery map. And there's a somewhat interactive map of our cemetery down at Marietta. You can see a small red circle on there. It's not, at this scale, in a big room maybe it's not that viewable, but there's a red circle right there. That's showing the location of him. I have a feature I need to add back into this app, which is to show where you are on the cemetery, but that was taking a little bit more work than I had planned, so we're going to wait on that and do that in the next year. So that's the point. That's the location. You can pinch to zoom in, and gives us a more detailed look if you're trying to see exactly what it's showing. Plus, it's showing, back to that middle item, it's showing a list of the other people that are in that same lot. So it says graves at location, and then gives, I think it says 166. At this cemetery, it doesn't necessarily put the word lot there, but in this example, it's matching to what's on the map. You can also click on other squares on the map, and it's going to show you who are in those squares and give you the ability to look up more detailed information on them. So the next screen will show that. Clicking on that gives me that list there. So we're still on the map. Took my finger, touched on that item, and it gave me the list of graves in that cemetery. You can then click on one of those if you want. In this case, I'm clicking on my Aunt Pat's grave, which is what's brought up there, and it gives her information. So in summary, we're still working on it, but it's workable. You can go there. You might get a glitch or two, but you can always go back to the main home screen and start over. Let us know if you have any problems. Just click one of the email links and let us know that you were either in general it wasn't working, or when you clicked on one person it wasn't displaying the right information. Find a grave is a good alternative. I have the app on my phone, and it will do for the images in the cemetery that have GPS locations, it will give you little markers on a map. I don't like the map that much, but it does work. Gene and I were out looking for a grave in Ulysses Cemetery a few months ago, and we used that, and it was a recent grave, but somebody had already keyed the information in. Some of our volunteers do key in the information, so as they're gathering information for us, they will also put it on Find a Grave. So certainly try Find a Grave. And again, it was inspired by an idea from Bob Bell. And this was part of the idea with Bob Bell, which was instead of a kiosk or a directory, or at your directory, if you have a paper directory at your cemetery, you got to add a 9x12 sign, an 8x10 sign, whatever size sign you wanted, where your visitors could come up to that and either type in that address right there, or if they know how to do the QR codes, take the smartphone, scan the QR code, and it takes you right to the website. So any cemetery that might want this, we have a template like this available, and we will give it to you for free. And, oh, I left my little arrows off, and there we go. So thank you very much.
Honoring those who have passed away. Honoring those who have passed away have always been an important aspect of human lives. We mourn their loss and cherish their memory in various ways. Memorials, wakes, funerals, all are outward representations of mourning and an effort to show our love and respect for those who have passed on. One of the preferred ways is through the decoration of graves with flowers, wreaths, or other sentimental trinkets. In the cemetery, traditionally, coins have been left on the graves of the American military veterans. Leaving change on the headstones tell the loved ones of the departed soldier's family that someone has come to visit the grave. Each type of coin has a different meaning. Leaving a penny signifies that you have visited and want to thank the veteran for their service. A nickel left on the grave means you trained at boot camp with a deceased service person, while a dime signifies you have served with them. Finally, a quarter signifies that you were with the service person when he passed away. It is a loving and practical way to honor fallen comrades and their families throughout the year. Here, the next picture are some of the flag holders that are in the cemetery and where flags are placed at specific times of the year. And on the top is the GAR, and then there's the Spanish American. We got World War I, World War II, the Korean War, and the Vietnam War. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words, allowing memories to be frozen in time so that they may look back on and cherish. Today we continue these traditions in ways that reflect our personal preferences and relationships of the departed. So if you look at this tombstone, you will say the male is a farmer. The wife loved to sew or was a seamstress. A picture of a significant anniversary, the birth and death date, and the marriage date. And down on the bottom is a list of their parents of these children. We leave stones on the headstones and adorn a grave with flowers because our loved ones remain in our hearts and minds long after they are gone. Gravestone symbols offer insights in the lives, beliefs, and cultural content of the deceased. These symbols ranging from religious icons to depictions of events provide a visual language that can be revealed in the person's faith, occupation, and even their family relationships. These symbols that I'm going to talk about now are all those that have been found. They are not stock pictures, but they are found on the tombstones of all of the Butler County. The few there's many, but the ones that I picked was an anchor, which means a symbol of hope. Angels, which is a guide to heaven. Arches and columns, symbolizing a triumph entry into the heaven or victory over death. A book is a symbol of divine word. The dove is a symbol of love, purity, resurrection, or the Holy Spirit. Hands clasped symbolize meaning farewell, and the hope of meeting again in eternity. Finger pointing upwards symbolize a pathway to heaven, or the deceased found heavenly reward. Babies, baby shoes, or lambs mean innocence, used primarily on infants, stillborns, gravestones. Angels and sleeping cherubs are usually found on small children's gravestones. Opening gates is a symbol of afterlife and the deceased soul entering heaven. Tree stumps means your life has been interrupted. A chain is a broken symbol of the ending of a life, representing the severance of the bond between the soul and the body. Drapes are meaning sorrow and mourning. There are many more, but these are the ones that have been found, we found in the Butler County cemeteries. What do the mental crosses that you see in some cemeteries? Abbey Cemetery has one, for example. Charles Andorra of Spillville, Iowa, was a Czech-American immigrant. He designed and produced unique ornate cast metal crosses for grave markers, primarily in Czech Catholic cemeteries across the United States. He began making these crosses in 1875, and the early crosses were fashioned out of wagon strappings. And it started there because he was a furniture maker and worked with wood and everything, but his father-in-law had a stable. And so he would use his father-in-law's wood strappings and different things to form them. And then he made a wood model of them, and then they took them to casting, and finally they were sent to a foundry to be cast. His crosses have several different design elements. These include crosses which have the 3 lobes on the cross, which symbolize the Holy Trinity. Then we have angels, Lamb of God, hearts, crowns, the Virgin Mary, crossbones. Skull and crossbones are a primary feature, often not poison, but often symbolizing Christ's sacrifice for humanity. We have angels supporting the inscription plate, where the inscription plate is the name of the deceased that's buried there. And there's an angel, which is most common, holding up that plate, reflecting the unique heritage of people buried under them. Grave markers on the back will show the model number and his initials or the town. Andorra crosses are heavy, and they range from the weight of 100 to 300 pounds and range in height of 5'8", which is model number 3, to a whooping 10 feet, which is model 5X and 7. Prices range from $10 with number 3, $47 for 5XX. So in 1903, a 4-foot, 4-inch granite marker weighing 800 pounds would cost $27, with shipping charges of $1 to $2 per 100 pounds. So the low cost of most Andorra's markers would have been made an economical as well as a beautiful alternative to granite. Headstones are typically placed at the head of the grave. The term headstone itself implies the placement. They are primarily a way to identify the deceased in the cemetery, and they typically include the person's name, birth, death dates, and potentially other information. Footstones, which are smaller markers, are placed at the foot of the grave and are usually to mark the boundary of the grave or provide additional information. In many cultures, including Christian cultures, the deceased are buried with their heads to the west, allowing them to face the rising sun upon resurrection. While couples are buried together, the wife is typically buried on the right side, and the placement mirrors the traditional wedding day arrangement, where the groom stands on the left and the bride stands on the right. Some believe this placement also symbolizes the wife being closest to her husband's heart. Next, I have picked, which are many, but I have picked several unique cemeteries. The first one is Father Monsignor Rowe, and he put a little bench here. When I saw this and took a picture, I said, well, you could just sit down and talk to him. Maybe he'd even hear your confession, you know. And the next one is of the Burgess family, and Curtis loved his trike. And so the tombstone is representing a trike. And also of their camping, which they enjoy doing, and their daughter's interest in horses. Here we have a small child that comes from a very, the Pino family, and they were well known for, you know, their kids being in 4-H and everything. And this kind of, that's the stone they put down for the one that they had lost. The other one is a lady that she was very interested in American Indians, and she wanted to have a buffalo on her tombstone. Here is Novotny's rearing Belgian horse, and that's what he was known for. And then some we find that they may have a picture of the deceased on the tombstone. And then here's another couple picture, and I thought that was really pretty how they had the cross in there. And then there are benches, and on this bench, the hands that are imprinted on there are of the couple's grandchildren.
Good evening. I am Carolyn Gorick from Brainerd, and I have enjoyed working with the Boston Studio Cemetery Project with my colleagues for over 15 years. I'd like to go back to the subject of Bohemian National Cemeteries and explain a few of the common Czech words that you will see in some of the stones and crosses. Okay, here we have a tombstone, and it reads, Zde odpočívají, and that, in English, that is here rests. And Manzeli refers, it's a couple being buried there, and their name is Josef, means and, Anna, and their last name is Krepčikovi, and that is plural for the actual surname of Krepčik, but since it's both of them, it's Krepčikovi. And Otec refers to Joseph, the father, his born and died date, and Matka is the mother and her born and died date. And also I will go over a few Czech words you might see in our cemeteries, such as the inscription, the name of the cemetery, Český národní hřbitov. That means Czech National Cemetery, like Jean talked about. Otec is the father, Matka is the mother, Dcera, you would see daughter, Syn, son, and there was handouts. If you have these words, you can follow along. Study refers to the age of a person. Rok is year. Narozen, born. Zemřel or zemřela, he died or she died. Manželka is always the wife. Manžel is the husband. And then you might also see tady odpočívaj means here rests, and odpočívaj v pokoji, rest in peace. And then we have the months of the year. Leden is January, Únor, February, Březen, March, Duben, April, Květen, May, Červen is June, Červenec is July, Srpen is August, Září is September, Říjen is October, Listopad, November, and Prosinec is December. And these Czech words you will find mostly in the cemeteries in the Linwood, Brno, Abbey, and Brainerd area. And on your handout, I also gave you a list of some of the German words, and these would be found in German cemeteries, which are mostly found in the Surprise, Garrison, or Rising City area. And if you didn't get a handout, there might be some left in the back there. And now, I will begin my abbreviated version of who's who buried in Butler County. I know there are many noteworthy people to talk about, but I've chosen to talk about these 11 people who are famous or well known. First of all, we have John Patrick Kirby. He was born in David City and graduated from St. Mary's High School, which is now Aquinas High School, where he participated in sports and was inducted into the Nebraska High School Sports Hall of Fame in 2005. He earned a scholarship to play football at UNL, where he earned his bachelor's degree in biological science and physical education. He then went on to play professional football for 7 years with the Minnesota Vikings and the New York Giants. Then he came back to David City with his wife, Mary Sue, to raise their family. He taught and coached at Aquinas High School. He also worked at Henningsen Foods and Dale Electronics. He did serve in the National Guard, and many of you may remember him as being a very avid runner and walking, often taking part in many local events. He died in 2017 and is buried in St. Mary's Catholic Cemetery. As it turns out, his family told me that John enjoyed walking through cemeteries and telling stories. So, as we walk through some of our Butler County cemeteries, let's see who else we find. Okay, we come across botanist John Polk Dunlap. He was born in Missouri and was one of the first settlers in the Dwight area, coming there in 1866. He immediately began a nursery on the south end of Dwight. He called it Lone Star, and so the area was called Lone Star before it became Dwight. In 1869, he taught in the area's first school, which was a sod schoolhouse. Okay, and in the 1870s, he created the Dunlap apple in his nursery, which is named after him. He died in 1929 and is buried in the Union Cemetery west of Dwight on Highway 66. His stone reads, "His creed, be fair." Okay, then we come across collector Alfred Dihacek. He was born on a farm in the Linwood area. He had one of the largest collections of Pawnee Indian relics in the state of Nebraska. His collection included tomahawks, medicine bowls, pottery, stone maps, arrowheads, beads, baskets, and much, much more, even skulls and bones that he found in an Indian burial ground on his property near Linwood. He found these items in the 1950s and 60s and donated them to the Butler County Historical Society. In 2015, the Society's board had a representative from Nebraska Commission of Indian Affairs take the skulls to be properly honored and hopefully to be returned to their tribe for proper burial. Dihacek wrote a book titled A History of the Linwood, Nebraska Community. This was published in 1961. It is available at the Hrushka Library. He died in 1973 and is buried in the Linwood Hills Cemetery. Then we come across the renowned artist Dale William Nichols. He was born and grew up on the family farm near David City, where he lived for 20 years. He studied at several art institutes and spent time in the advertising art field and later began painting scenes of his boyhood recollection. He became one of the most significant artists in the American regionalist painting and gained a national reputation. He was admired for his gentle attention to details and loving portrayal of rural pictures, of rural life. He is best known for his work as a rural landscape painter. His paintings hang in many national art museums and were exhibited at 5 World's Fairs. His artwork can be found in many public and private collections, including our own Bone Creek Museum, which is now designated as the National Center for Nichols Studies. Dale Nichols died in 1995 in Sedona, Arizona, and is buried in the David City Cemetery. And you can see some of his paintings in the back of the room. The Bone Creek Museum brought them here. Dan Sainley, who is the administrator of the Nebraska Bohemian Facebook page, and Alan Kolbach are seen here with the long-lost painting of Dan's grandparents' farm. This was Dale Nichols' very first painting of a red barn. It was a winter farm scene done on site. in 1933 at the family farm located by Surprise, Nebraska. The painting was titled The Sanely Farm. It had been out of public sight for over 88 decades, from 1938 up until 2021, when it was rediscovered by an auction house at a residence in Omaha. Some remaining Sanely family members included Dan Sanely, and the museum cooperated to purchase the artworks, and now it is on display at the Bone Creek Art Museum. Next, we find Floyd Francis Nichols, a famous metal sculptor. He too was born on the family farm west of David City. He was a brother to Dale. He was the older brother. At the age of 14, he broke and trained wild horses. At the age of 16, he headed for Wyoming on horseback. He worked his way westward, stopping for several weeks to work for Jules Sandos, and became well acquainted with Maury Sandos. He lived with a group of Native Americans in the Badlands before finally reaching his aunt's ranch in Wyoming, where he intended to homestead. Before he could get homestead rights, World War III broke out. He grew a mustache, lied about his age, and enlisted. During the war, he was trained to ride a motorcycle and carried messages up to the front line. Following the war, he returned to David City and became a welder and sculptor. He was a master metal sculptor and became well known for his statuettes depicting Western images, and also for his hand-forged knives. He created many of these knives for local men who served in World War II. Many of his knives had Indian head nickels embedded in the handle, but later the government forbade defacing currency in that manner. A knife like this can be viewed in the back room. The museum again, Bone Creek Museum, brought several of his knives that he made, and also a little miniature metal sculpture. Floyd Nichols died in 1958 and is buried in the David City Cemetery. Now we find Ruth Nichols, a self-taught artist. She was born on the family farm west of David City and got married at the early age of 17. While raising 6 children, she managed to continue her artistic endeavors in the legacy of her father, Floyd, and her uncle, Dale. She created amazing artwork by painting with pastels and acrylic paint, but her biggest pride was sculpting. She taught art classes to children for many years, and she renovated her father's well-known soldier and sailor sculptures on the pillars at the David City Park entrance on Highway 15. She also renovated countless sacred statues throughout many churches in Butler County and the surrounding areas. She was very instrumental in starting the Bone Creek Art Museum. She was well known for her singing. She was named after famous vaudeville star Ruth Etting of David City and loved to impersonate her any chance she got. Ruth died in 2023 and is buried in the David City Cemetery. Next, we find William Billy Parks. He was born in North Carolina. He was a well-respected African-American who found work as an electrician here in David City and was first hired to train trotting horses by H. Hank Smith. That was when David City was a horse racing center. It was said that Billy had an uncanny talent to tame and train horses. He lived at the fairgrounds, and he was one of the few people of color to live in David City in the early 1900s. His obituary also states that he also lived in Ulysses for a small time period. Okay, he died in 1958 and is buried in Potter's Field in the David City Cemetery. He may have been buried there because of his poverty, or unfortunately, because of his color. When we refer to Potter's Field, it is typically an area of the cemetery set away from the common community burials, and it is an area where criminals or indigents or unidentified bodies are usually laid to rest. Next, we come to politician Walter Henry Judd. He was born in Rising City, and as a young man, he trained with the ROTC for the U.S. Army near the end of the war, World War I. He earned his medical doctorate degree at the University of Nebraska in 1923. He became a medical missionary in China, where he eventually headed up a hospital. Later, he worked at the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota, and then went back to China, returning once again to Minnesota in 1938. He was elected to the U.S. Congress from Minnesota in 1942. He served in this capacity for 20 years and was known for his eloquent oratory and expertise in U.S. foreign policy. He gave the keynote address at the 1960 Republican National Convention in Chicago. In 1981, he received the Presidential Medal of Freedom, which is the highest national civilian honor that you can earn. He died in 1994 in Mitchellville, Maryland, and is buried in the Blue Valley Cemetery near Surprise. Next, we come across George Washington Mattingly. Unfortunately, there is no known picture of him, but we will give a brief history on him. He was born a slave in Kentucky and served as a Union soldier in the Civil War. Like all slaves, he was given no education and was never able to read and write as a young boy. George came to Nebraska in about 1871, exercising his right as a veteran to homestead 80 acres, which were located 5 miles south of David City in Center Township. He earned the respect of his white neighbors and made friends in the David City business community. Eventually, he bought more land and obtained his wealth through the benefit of gaining an education. He moved from his farm to town in 1898. He was raised as a Catholic and is listed in the 1978 St. Mary's Parish Centennial Book as having been a member of the building committee for their church, which was built in 1911. This beautiful stained glass window in the back of the church on the south side was donated by Mattingly in memory of his 2 wives, Laura and Mary. He died in 1924 and is buried in St. Mary's Catholic Cemetery. Next, we have Governor Chester Hardy Aldrich. He was born on a farm in Ohio and graduated from Ohio State University in 1888, and shortly thereafter he came to Nebraska and settled in Ulysses. His wife, Sylvia Stroman, was from Ulysses, and they were married there in 1889. He was appointed principal of the high school there. Besides his duties as administrator and teacher, he studied law and was admitted to the Nebraska bar in 1890. A year later, they moved to David City, where he started a successful law practice and also owned a large ranch where he fed and shipped livestock on a very large scale. He served 2 terms as the mayor of David City, while also serving on the school board. Later, they moved to Lincoln, where he was elected to the Senate. He was elected the 16th governor of the state of Nebraska, serving from 1911 to 1913. Then he served as a justice on the state Supreme Court from 1918 to 1923. He died on March 10, 1924 in Superior, Nebraska, and in 1937 his body was reinterred in the Ulysses Township Cemetery. Okay, my last and final who's who of people buried in Butler County is someone quite special. So first, I'd just like to show you a clip of a popular TV show entitled I've Got a Secret. The contestant on this special show of September 9, 1959 was...
Now I'd like to welcome our next contestant, please. Will you come in, sir? Will you tell our panel, please, what your name is and where you're from? John Cressy, Rainer, Nebraska. Mr. Cressy, and he is from Nebraska. Now, Mr. Cressy, if you will whisper your secret to me, we'll show it to the folks at home.
He was one of the first boys in the Boy Scouts.
be helpful. You mean time, you mean date, or time of his life?
Time of his life.
Yes, that would be helpful too, I think.
Were you this, Mr. Cressy, when you were in your teens?
Yeah.
Was it something that a man usually is not?
Nobody said that.
You were the first, then, to be this that you were, is that right?
We were the first, yeah.
And there have been a lot, or there have been some since. Mr. Cressy, did the thing that you were have anything to do with a physical feat that you could perform?
An athletic feat or a physical achievement, no. Certainly. I wouldn't for any amount of money.
This happened when you were a little boy. You were
Never mind as a little boy, found out Mr. Cressy's secret is. Back in 1917, he was the very first boy. To become a girl. No. The very first boy in Father Flanagan's Boys Town. He was 12 years old, he ran away from home, and he had quit school and wanted to find a job. Now, jobs were not easily come by at that time, and he was picked up for crewing. About the same time, Father Flanagan had borrowed $90 to purchase an old building in Omaha to carry out his dream of sheltering homeless boys. Father Flanagan happened to be in the courtroom the day that Mr. Cressy was brought in, and he came forward and offered to care for Mr. Cressy. He also took another boy from the court and 3 homeless newsboys, and thus Boys Town was started as a reality. Mr. Cressy, how long did you stay in Boys Town? 5 months. Why only 5 months? Then Father Flanagan got me a job in highway on the farm, and I went over there and worked. You got a job as a chore boy. What do you do now, sir? I'm a farmer. He's a farmer. The only difference is, instead of being a chore boy, he now owns his own farm in Iowa. In Nebraska. Today, by the way, over 9,000 boys have lived part of their lives at Boys Town. It's now a city in itself, covers over 1,000 acres. It includes a modern farm and a dairy herd. And since Father Flanagan's death in 1948, his work has been carried on by Father Winter. Thank you, Mr. Cressy, for being with us. And here is your money, and here are the whiskers that you want.
Okay, that was John A. Cressy, and he was born in Iowa, like we just heard. In 1917, he was the very first of the 5 homeless Omaha boys. He was number 1, and they were sheltered in what is now known as the international famous Boys Town in Omaha. However, he was not an orphan. His mother was a bootlegger and was too busy bootlegging to pay attention to him. So he became a truant from school and stole some food and also some other things, and he ended up in court on that day when Father Flanagan was there. And this story was shared with me by his grandchildren that live in David City here. John Cressy came to Butler County and married a widow, Mrs. Emily Hodek Hotovy. They got married in 1937. He became a father and stepfather, a farmer, and he was a stepfather to her 5 children. And he became the father of 1 daughter. Many of you knew her. She was Darlene Cressy, the late Mrs. Eugene Divish of David City. Her children are quite proud of how her grandpa, John, turned his life around and was a hardworking, good man. John died in 1958, and he is buried in the Dwight Catholic Cemetery. And if you would like to know any more about any of these figures that I spoke of, you can either go to the Heritage Room at the Library of David City. They have a collection of a lot of information. Or you can visit the Bone Creek Art Museum. They have information. Or go to the Butler County Historical Society Facebook page. Or go to our Butler County Gallery.com website, and you can request their obituary on our website. And this concludes my portion of the program. Thank you.
Okay, I'm Jeanette Hines. There's a lot of you out there. Anyway, I take pictures of headstones for the library project. My part of this is grave dowsing. And whether it's fact or fiction, nobody's ever really decided, but I do it because it's interesting. Dowsing has been used for many years to find water or minerals. Some use twigs or coat hangers. I use copper rods, like this. There's two of them. Okay, one theory is that when the ground is broken, that the magnetic field is broken. In my opinion, that does not explain how occupant is determined. I'll try to show you a little bit, but I can't hold the microphone while I'm doing this. Okay, when grave dowsing, you walk supposedly over a grave, like this, and, oh, there must be something here. I think it works for water, too. Anyway, when they cross, then you hold it on one finger, like this, and if the rod moves in a clockwise manner, it's supposedly a male. If it goes counterclockwise, it's a female. So, you can believe what you want to about that. So, I have tried this one finger method over a grave, not knowing who is buried there. After using, once the rods cross, then you use the one finger method, and looking at the headstone, the finger method was confirmed. I'll show you that in the video. Okay, the first one is George Abern. He was a blind piano tuner, and he is buried in the David City Cemetery. His one-year-old daughter died in 1922 and is buried in Potter's Field. In 1938, her father died and is buried next to her. He has a headstone. According to the cemetery book, the plots were purchased by wife and mother Cora. Apparently, mother purchased the plot because George was blind and not able to read. Okay, when I went across George's grave, from the south to the north, the rods crossed, and then uncrossed. When holding the rod on one finger over George's grave, the rod circled clockwise, indicating a male. A further steps further, okay, there it's going in a clockwise manner. A few steps further, the rods crossed again. Then going west to east, where are we at? Okay, here's where the rods crossed. And we hold the rod over the grave. It's going counterclockwise, which would indicate a female. Now we go from the west to the east. And here the rods crossed, and keep moving a few steps forward. Still crossed. Here they uncrossed, which would indicate a small person buried there. Would indicate a small person buried there. When holding one rod over the grave, go to the next page here. Okay, did it go in? Yeah. Okay, went counterclockwise, indicating a female. So I would guess that that's where his one-year-old daughter is buried.
In an unmarked grave.
Yes, in an unmarked grave. Thank you. Okay, the next one is, this is the grave of Mrs. J.N. Doty. She has a headstone. Her husband is a Civil War veteran, and he is in an unmarked grave. His obituary says he is buried next to his wife in the David City Cemetery. She has a marker, same thing, the rod's crossed when dousing over her grave. When holding the rod on one finger, it's circled in a counterclockwise manner, indicating a female. Okay, this is his wife, and I don't remember what her name was, because back then women didn't have names. It was just Mrs. somebody else. Okay. There it's going in a counterclockwise manner. We move forward. Here they cross again. Which would indicate, it's going in a clockwise manner, which would indicate a female. Excuse me, male. So this is where James Doty is buried. And the reason I bring this up is he is in an unmarked grave. He is a veteran. So somebody, I don't know if it's the government, military, or who it is, but they will provide markers for veterans. But they have to be applied for by a family member, and they have to have different details. Anyway, looking at the different information, I cannot find any family members of his that could possibly ask for a marker. So if somebody has any ideas, that would be great. Okay, the next one is at Pleasant Hill Cemetery. This is Janet Glock Mills, and she was cremated. Okay, we're gonna see what we can find here. Okay, here the rod's crossed. And there it is moving in a counterclockwise manner, which it would appear to me that it works on cremains too. But there again, believe what you want to out of it. That's my part of the story.
In closing, I will combine the words of an unknown author that are etched in stone on a monument in Blue Valley Cemetery by surprise with our feelings towards this project. Lives are commemorated, deaths are recorded, memories are made tangible, and love is undisguised. This is a cemetery. Communities accord respect, families bestow reverence, historians seek information, and our heritage is therefore enriched. My colleagues and I have been doing this volunteer work as a true labor of love. Most of us are genealogists, and so we want to preserve our heritage and community history through this cemetery project. The sincere environment of a cemetery can provide solace and comfort to grieving families and friends when they lose a loved one. Gravestones give us more than just dates. Testimonies of devotion, pride, and reverence are carved on stones to pay warm tribute to accomplishments, to the life, not death, of a loved one. The cemetery is a homeland for families, memorials that are sustained source of comfort for the living. We hope that you will get acquainted with and use our website again. As we say, volunteers are always welcome. Please always remember, a cemetery is a history of people, a potential record of yesterday, and a sanctuary of peace and quiet today. A cemetery exists because every life is worth living and remembering always. This concludes our program, and we would like you all, thank you all for attending. And if there are any questions, we will try to answer. Thank you very much. Mary.
Lady that spoke during the run. Jeanette, there's a question for you.
Yes, what is that?
The question is, he wants to know, if there's any sensation in my hand when I'm holding the rod. And no, I would say there is not. We're about 25 to 30.
They are gonna give away prizes soon. You do have to be here to win.
Are you gonna be using the microphone?
He was just talking about a barn south of David City, and he wondered what happened to the pictures. I'm not involved with pictures, so I really couldn't say anything. He thought there was a Jeanette? Oh, okay, that's where I took what he said. And he wondered what happened to the pictures from Reed or something like that, the video.
Jeanette, what type of energy or what makes that really go, clockwise or counterclockwise? I mean, is it bones? Is it the spirit? Is it?
I have no idea. But I'm sure some of you have used the needle and thread method on the wrist of a pregnant woman. Yeah. Yeah, I'd say it's pretty similar to that.
I've got a question about a cemetery near Abby. And anyhow, when I was out there looking one afternoon, I ran across a gravestone that was down in the grass. So I happened to step on it, and it was, I felt it was kind of different. So I pulled the grass away and looked at it. And it was actually put in backwards. And it actually was running, I think the name on it was supposed to be Cerny, is what I could pick out. But it was spelled, you had to almost hold like a mirror above it in order to see what it was. And I thought that was kind of strange. I didn't know if there was any significance on if it was a criminal or, or what.
I really don't know anything about that. I think Jean might, or or the cemetery board from that cemetery, they might have a clue.
I've got something. I'm Larry Barcel, and we've got the sawmill over here on the way to Columbus. And about 45 years ago, they asked me to take the trees out just north of the West Linwood Cemetery. And what's unique about that is that if you ever walk into that cemetery and walk to the north side, there is a deep ravine in there, and the reason for that is the CCC or somebody in the 30s was going to have a canal running from Bellwood to Fremont, because there was a real big sawmill in Fremont at the time. And I was told by somebody quite a few years ago that there was 3 of those sections that were done, and then the CCC stopped. And so that one is still there. If you walk there, there's a deep cut there, and it's the whole length of the cemetery. And the other 2 that were started, the farmers that own the ground filled the holes back in. But that's all I know about it. Mr. Reisendorf, I've got a picture of your family, and I don't know if it's in Martinek, Bartzel, or who else am I thinking about? Martinek. It's one of the 3 families that I was looking at quite a while ago, and I showed it to Don Meisenberg. And you know how they used to make the pictures that you fold them up so they could sit on the counter or whatever. And it's one of your family. I'm gonna have to look it up and see who. I don't remember who they were married to, but Meisenberg, I think, was the lady. That's it.
I have a feeling we could have questions going all night, and these folks are gonna stick around, so just go ahead and come up to them and ask them questions. How about these people? I'm also proud of them. They did a really fantastic job. Okay, when you came in, you got a little ticket, right?
Yeah.
A little blue ticket. We're gonna draw for tickets. We have 2 prizes. This is a tote bag, has Butler County Historical Society on it. Kevin Meisenberg will draw 1 ticket. So get your ticket out. All right, I'm gonna read the number. Gotta be here to win. 334293. Mark Doling, come on down. Hustle up, buddy. Come on. Let's see a little hustle. You're welcome. I have no doubt. Most trustworthy guy in Butler County. Okay, and the next thing that we're gonna give away is this year's book. It's all about the 2024 programs, with the exclusion of not the documentary memory programs, which we're working on that book. So this book is a $30 value, so. 334439. Are you here? 334439. Try it again. Can't leave early. All right, 334379. You got a winner. Take that back to her. There you go. And that is all. All right, and to close us off, I want to thank everybody for coming. We so appreciate that you're here. Thank you to everyone who put a buck or however much in the donation jar. We really rely on those donations, and we appreciate that you give them. And we also appreciate if you bought a book. Thank you, that also helps us out. The next program is December 1st. Coach Ron Mimic of Aquinas is giving that program. It's called Trains, Tractors, and Trucks. So I expect every man to be there. A very manly program. So I suspect it's going to be all about how transportation helped our county grow. So safe travels home, and thank you for coming.